I'm Classic. I'm a film and TV production student, and I study film and practice film at a very entry beginner level. Obviously, you yourself are very experienced. Is it all right if we ask you some questions today?
Yep, I'm very happy to answer your questions on filmmaking.
Great. Well, let's start with what's your name and who are you?
My name's Greg Hall. I've been making films for probably longer than I'd like to remember, but professionally just over 20 years.
That's fantastic.
I started making films when I was about 14, 15, like of a home movie camera at home. I studied filmmaking in Farnham at the University of Creative Arts. I made my first feature film, The Plague, when I was like in my early 20s. I'm in my early 40s now, so I've been working professionally for about 20 years. I've directed like 6 no to low budget feature films, 1 feature length documentary, about 4 short films, and yeah, I work as a director and a writer predominantly.
Wow, that's very, very impressive. Big wealth of experience. That's great. Could you tell us about some of the films you've made? Maybe some of your favorite ones that you've made.
Yeah, I would say, so my career kind of kicked off when I was about 22, 23. I just kind of left film school, so this was kind of the end of 2003, and I made my first feature film called The Plague for £3,500. So I did everything that they tell you not to do. I basically made the feature film on a credit card with like a gang of friends. There's like not many of us, about 5, 6 of us. It was all based on kind of my friends growing up and kind of petty crime and all the kind of silly things that teenagers get up to. I cast it with a lot of like untrained actors who are really kind of authentic kind of London kind of voices. There was lots of improvisation. We shot it over 3 weeks, and I was very lucky. It did very well. It got a big award off the director Mike Lee. It got the Catherine Cartledge Foundation Scholarship at the Sarajevo Film Festival. It's screened at the London Film Festival, which is a huge festival in the UK. It's one of the earliest films to be kind of released online in 2005. I remember at the time everyone was telling me that films would never be distributed on the internet. Now look at the times. Now everything's on the internet. Yeah. You can't keep it off the internet. The film got bought by the BBC. I mean, this took like 2 years of life for the film, but effectively my first feature was made on £3,500 and ended up getting a small scale UK cinematic release and DVD release, screened on BBC, picked up awards. And that kind of kick-started my career, and really I've kind of made a name for myself for making films for no money. No. Some better than others. I've done some kind of, I've crowdfunded feature films. I've been commissioned to make feature films. I've worked directly with distributors. I've made genre films. The most recent work, so The Plague I'm very proud of. And then the most recent, I've done everything backwards. I started off making feature films. Then the last few films I've made have been short films where I've been collaborating quite closely with an actor and writer called George Russo. So a short film called Smackhead did very well, which is a 7-minute film at festivals. And then the latest short I did called Baby Boy, which again was a collaboration with writer and actor George Russo, that world premiered at the Tier A Iris Prize LGBTQ Film Festival. It's screened on Channel 4, it's streamed on all 4, and it's available on director's notes. So I'm super proud of that. So I'm proud of a lot of work I've done. 1 or 2 films I'm not so proud of. They're films where I've probably been a director for hire. And then, as well as directing, I've also kind of developed, I started off with no script, completely improvising with actors. And now, funny enough, I get a lot of writing jobs. And one of the reasons for that is I wrote with George Russo, I co-wrote a feature film, which I didn't direct, but I co-wrote it, called Villain, which was number 1 on Netflix in the UK, number 1 on Netflix Australia, New Zealand. It was the New York Times Critics Pick of the Week, Time Out's top 12 crime films. So I get a lot of writing work as well now as the directing work. So that in a nutshell is kind of my career. There's been a lot of quiet times as well. I mean, it's not all festivals and awards.
Yeah, of course. That's incredible, though. It sounds like you really found movie magic in places where you probably weren't thinking you'd find it, which is really, really, really great to hear. Really nice.
Yeah, my motivation's always been to I think storytelling's a really important thing to me. As human beings, I think sharing stories and storytelling itself is what brings us together. It's such a universal kind of art form. And for me, what's really been a motivator hasn't been so much money. Like, I've always done things the wrong way round, or sometimes, burnt a few bridges or put a few noses out of place. But for me, it's about telling stories that don't get told. That's what really interests me, is telling the kind of stories that don't get green lit, that we don't often see on TV or within the mainstream. It's trying to draw from the fringes of society and elevating those stories. That's what I find more important than making money. Like, still, you have to make money and you have to survive, but for me, the most motivating thing has been about telling stories that are less represented and often at the fringes of society. That's what most kind of interests me.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I've actually had the pleasure of watching a couple of your recent works.
Cool.
And it's funny, it's interesting because the content that you make and these stories that you like to tell aren't typically, like you've said, they're not typically what gets greenlit, but they all have similar themes with them. Why would you say that you focus and intertwine similar themes and throughout your...
Yeah, I mean, it is strange. Like, I don't want to pigeonhole myself, but my work has slightly pigeonholed me. I hate using the term like urban stories, but often my films are either pretty much 99% of the films I made are all set in London. I think I made one film in Manchester, which again is quite an urban film, but my films are often have that urban setting. They're often championed or led by working class voices. Again, when we look at class, there's like that's very intersectional in terms of that covers race, gender, etc. So often, I'm about, again, looking at those stories that don't get told, again, because it's the fringes of society, it's the underbelly of society, things like drug use, drug addiction, that stuff has kind of impacted my life and impacted my stories. Ultimately, I always say I tell stories about my neighbourhoods and the people I live amongst, and that is why I tell those stories. But the plague was like, it came from a place of like growing up and wanting to see me and my friends represented, and it couldn't have come to life without the actors in it as well, because like the young people that portrayed those characters were the real deal. Like the main actor Sammy grew up from the Winstanley estate in Clapham Junction. The young boy that plays is from like Bethnal Green. So like all the young guys in it are like an authentic representation of at that time. I mean, it's about 20 years ago of like real teenagers growing up in London. So but ultimately I nicked it. It was like stolen from a really great film mixed with my own experiences, which is the best way to make a film.
I can imagine. I also want to touch on something. You said that you did stuff backwards. What was the next, after the success of The Plague that you probably weren't expecting? What did you proceed to then go on to do after that? Obviously, maybe looking at filmmakers today, they try to get a sequel in the works, or maybe a spin-off or some sort. What did you decide to do with your career?
I kind of pushed back on that. I was offered a lot of things. There's a great film that came out, Life and Lyrics, that probably in retrospect I should have taken it, and I should have taken the payday and earned much more money and directed that. But I was very much very cautious of being pigeonholed as this urban filmmaker, that because The Plague was a certain type of film, people then just want The Plague 2 or a repetition of that. And really, I turned down, and I probably look back now, because I was only 22, 23, it's like, you idiot, you should have taken the money and ran with it. But I turned down a lot of offers, but the follow-up film that I did was off the back of The Plague, which got the Catherine Cartledge Foundation Scholarship, who was an actress who worked with Mike Leigh, and sadly passed away. She was a brilliant actress. One of her very close friends was a guy called Steve Martland, who's also sadly passed away. He's a really famous classical composer and lived very close to me at the time. I was living in Finsbury Park, and we kind of met up as The Plague was doing its thing, and he introduced me to a guy called Alexandra Poots, who was formerly from the English National Opera and had set up, or was part of a new festival called the Manchester International Festival, which isn't a film festival, it's like a festival that commissions artists
Okay.
And they commissioned a kind of film to music project. And basically, the follow-up film was we went to Manchester, and Steve Martland wrote all the music without seeing the film. And then we basically devised a film from a 5-page outline, which was based on fairy tales, worked with actors in Manchester, devised it, shot it all in chronological order, then edited that film, which is a very bleak and dark film, to his music. It was a very art house film. It did very well at the festival. It sold 5 sellout screenings, but didn't live up to the commercial success of what The Plague did. But effectively, that was the follow-up, where I was given full creative freedom. And then my career kind of...
What year was that in?
That was 2007 that came out.
So that's right after. Wow.
Yeah, I kind of got into a run of doing like a feature film every 3 years. So then after that, I got a tax break. I made a film called SSDD, Same Shit, Different Day, which was all shot in Hackney, which was all improvised with actors. And then went to Mexico, where they did a retrospective of my work, and someone pointed out I'd made a feature every 3 years, which then motivated me to make my 4th feature called Communion, which was crowdfunded, where we pre-sold the DVDs. And at that time, my identity was called Broke But Making Films, because I was kind of making films for very little money. And that was kind of before, that was around 2013 when Communion, my 4th feature, came out. And then after that, I moved into doing a few more commercial projects where I was a director for hire.
Okay. All right. So yeah, it sounds like you've been keeping busy and active, which is.
Tried to. I've had 2 kids as well in that time. Of course.
As well, that's great. Speaking of, I know obviously lockdown isn't really affecting your business as much anymore, but in the industry. But when did you have any struggles with lockdown? Like maybe when you hit lockdown, maybe those productions that had to get put on pause for you, or maybe you found even more inspiration for ideas, or how did you find lockdown? And that's
I think that it was it was tough. It was really tough, and I think it's hard to there was a lot of people that were like, yeah, let's use lockdown to like just write and do loads of work, and it's like, man, there's like loads of people dying, and we shouldn't just kind of like elevate this idea that we should just do loads of work when things are the world is quite fractured, and the inequalities of the world are and the precariousness of humanity is really magnified through something like a pandemic. So it was a struggle. A lot of things were lost, a load of work, but I can't complain. My health was good. I had 2 kids. So we were locked up with children, which made it entertaining in some respects. I mean, I didn't stop working. I was doing a lot of lecturing. I ended up making a short film with my daughter called R.I.P. Audrey, which is kind of about the lockdown. I shot it on a mobile phone, on an iPhone 11, and that premiered at the Portobello Film Festival and then screened on London Live. So that's a small little black and white film with my daughter in, which I co-wrote with her, and super proud of that. And then also during the kind of first lockdown, me and George Russo wrote Baby Boy, and then kind of shot Baby Boy. It was produced by Jamie Louise Davis with her production company, House 38. Kind of shot that just after the first lockdown. It's all a little bit of a blur, if I'm honest with you. It went from lockdown to lockdown. It was in between lockdowns, and we edited it in another lockdown. One of the composer, his mum died from coronavirus. And the film's dedicated to her, and the film is very much like a fever dream, because that whole period of time was like a fever dream. It was like a crazy time. So I think we're still kind of living with the consequences of that period of time as well. So it's hard to know whether we're fully out of that, but I can't complain too much. It was a challenge, but I was healthy, I had good people around me, and I was still earning money in terms of doing lecturing work and keeping filmmaking and doing writing. So, it was a challenge, but, some people on the planet live in worse ways before lockdown. Do you know what I mean?
No, I understand.
So I can't complain too much.
No, it's really nice to, hear that grounded, just reflective period of time. Because like you said, a lot of people, I'm assuming, maybe were, losing faith in maybe their film or their work or whatever. But that's really nice to hear, especially the filmmaking of your children. That must be great.
That's probably one of my favourite films I've ever made, and it's the only film I've not made that's like bleak. Like, it's a really happy film, even though it's about a young girl's fish dying and her burying the fish. which again is kind of like a very small little metaphor about COVID and lockdowns and like all the death and the challenges we were seeing. But yeah, super proud of that film. There's the only film I made, but I've always wanted to make a film in black and white, and yeah, really like one of my most favourite films actually. Yeah,
that's fantastic. So now that we're about out of that time, well, obviously you said we're facing ramifications of streaming services and whatnot, but is there anything that you're working on now that you're, that's post lockdown? You can't wait to get back in there.
I can't say too much. There's like the latest script George and I wrote. So that's George Russo that we wrote Villain. We're in the process of optioning a follow-up to that, another feature script. There's things that are developing around Villain that we wrote. Again, I can't really talk too much about all of that as well. Yeah, I do a lot of writing gigs at the moment, so I'm taking on work. I'm in the process of drafting a film called Tales from the Trap, which is with a producer called Terry Stone, which should get made, which I'm just a writer for hire, but it's been really good fun writing that. And yeah, doing lots of writing gigs. I'm not sure what I'll be directing next. I've been offered a few things, but I just kind of turned them down because they've not been right. I'm working on something with George that is possibly maybe the next feature I'm going to direct. Yeah, it's weird, like, you know, normally you have stuff there, but things have been up and down in life, you know, like turning 40, the last couple of years I went through like a health scare coming out of, like during the pandemic, which was quite intense, trying to earn money, seeing my kids growing up a bit, my daughter going to secondary school, having a son as well. So life, like, you know, I was very motivated. Like I said, I made my first feature at 22. So I didn't stop for like 20 odd years. And then maybe hitting the lockdowns has made me slow down a little bit. So still juggling things, doing lots of teaching work, which I really enjoy, which is like lecturing at universities and stuff like that. So everything's kind of film related. But I feel like as I've kind of turned 40, the gears shifted slightly. But yeah, I'm still trying to make projects. Nothing that I can go into too much detail.
Going, which is
certainly, to be honest, I'm not. There's nothing else I can do. I painted myself into a corner, really. You know, I just kind of went and did this, and there's not many options left to me. So I've got to drive it into the wall and just try and keep going. But sometimes that's good, like not having a plan B. You know, that's a good motivator, I think.
Yeah. So just to round all that up, I just want to ask you. I know it's a very broad question. Probably get asked it quite a bit, but is there? Obviously, me. I'm a beginner filmmaker. I'm obviously very entry level. I'm not, not as knowledgeable about what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing. Is there anything that you could possibly, any advice you could give of like how to kind of find success in the work instead of just drifting along a bit and just doing this and that?
Yeah, I think the thing with the film industry is what I'm going to say isn't particularly original and it's possibly quite cliche. And some people push back and say you shouldn't say this, but I think, like the industry is full of gatekeepers. It's full of people who don't want to let people through. It's full of agents, producers, commissioners who want to stranglehold on what gets greenlit and what doesn't get greenlit. And I think understanding those hurdles is really important. Because you can become really defeated, and it can become quite depressing that unless, because only one person will get picked out of thousands. So really my main advice, and that's only because it's how I've done it, it doesn't mean it's the right way to do it, is just making stuff. I think that's how you learn and improve your filmmaking. I think the thing about filmmaking is you're never going to make a perfect film. Which is gutting. Like, you just keep making films, and you keep making films and making films. And that's why directors like Kurosawa, when he gets like the Lifetime Oscar, says he's only just learning at the age of 80. And it's why we got greats like Martin Scorsese saying he feels like he's only just learning at the end stages of his life what cinema is really about. And I think that's the brutality of the art form is like you just keep making and improving. And the only way you can do that, unless you're waiting for people to greenlight you and give you money, you need to go out and make your own films. And again, it's a cliche, grab a camera, go and make stuff. And there's people that push back against that and say, well, you
Yeah.
shouldn't do because, like, you know, it's expecting people to work for no money and you are only hit a certain level. I understand that. But when you've got nothing else, again, it comes back to that idea of DIY culture of, like, just do it.
Do it.
Grab a camera,
Just do it.
like how I made a film with my daughter, an iPhone, a couple of actors, shoot it and tell your story and articulate and get better. So make films. And one of the other things, which I've always been terrible at, but I'm much better this year, is watching films. I watch pretty much a film every single day. And consuming culture, reading books, listening to music, going to art galleries, trying to consume as much art and culture will improve you as an artist. And it's great because you think you're being lazy, but really it's homework. So if you find yourself watching stuff or listening to music or just experiencing life as well, you know, putting yourself in kind of, you know, I've been involved in a lot of political activism in my life, anti-fascism, stuff like that. Like, you know, putting yourself on the edge of things is on the fringes is a fun way to learn about life, you know. I often think, like, I love history, and I think about piracy, about people, like working class people that were so poor and they would just run away and join pirates. And pirates were a great example of people that were runaway slaves, people that were criminals, all types of fringes of society that joined pirate ships and went out and robbed rich people and fled the law. And I think, wow, what an exciting life that would be. And I've always tried.
Like a feature film.
Yeah, I mean, there is a feature film there, but I've always said there's a great book called Villains of All Nations, which is slightly where the villain title comes from. Though it's also lifted from a 1970s film. But certainly that attitude of, like, live your life and don't play it safe. I think, that's what I'm trying to get at is, you know, consume culture and just live life. You only get to live once, so you might as well take some risks and enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I thank you for that. That's that's very, because obviously, you know, a lot of people, you know, obviously in other subjects and fields, you know, there's a book that you have to follow, like, you know, with maths or science, there's an equation you have to know to get to the answer, but with filmmaking, it's so open-ended. And obviously people can get kind of lost and mixed up in that because there's just so much. But yeah, I think just saying something you want to do it, that's something I've been trying to start doing myself more this year.
Yeah, there's no set path to filmmaking, and, you know, you can work your way up through the industry. That's certainly one way of doing it, and if that's the route people want to do, that's great. But, you know, my whole attitude is just, you know, take risks and try things. And filmmaking's a little bit like the Wild West. It's that classic William Goldman quote, like, no one knows anything. Like, that's the truth in filmmaking and TV as well. Everyone tells you, oh, this is going to be the next big thing. This is going to be the next big thing. Truth is, no one knows anything. So you might as well go out and make your feature film for $3,500, influenced by your friends, and just see what happens.
Yeah, of course. So let's actually get to know a bit more of the great Greg Hall. So like I said, you love London. If you were to take yourself out to dinner right now, where would you probably head to?
Oh boy, where would I go to dinner? There's, I've got kids and I've got a family, so that you can never knock Pizza Express. I think Pizza Express is a good family occasion. But, you know, I have quite nice tastes as well. So I live in Islington. Although I do live in a council estate, so don't hold me against living in Islington, which is quite bourgeois in places. But, you know, I love the fine restaurants. There's a wonderful place called Bellinger. I love food and restaurants. You know, it's like, again, consuming good art. You got to consume good food, and just even if you come from a working class background, doesn't mean you shouldn't enjoy the luxuries of life. And for me, food and a diversity of food. My partner's Eritrean, so I like eating East African food. She grew up in Italy. I like eating Italian food. My heritage is part Armenian, so I love that kind of food. So yeah, food is a glorious thing to consume. Yeah, no. So I can't limit myself to one restaurant.
Pizza Express was.
But Pizza Express is
yeah. Express, the answer there.
You can't knock a good Pizza Express. Yeah.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, you get a lot of writing gigs now. Would you say overall you prefer writing or directing, or are they sort of symbiotic in their kind of?
Yeah, I mean, before it was weird because I never considered myself a writer. I was just a director, and I would write out of necessity, and often I would improvise with a lot of actors. So I learned how to write by devising and improvising and creating scripts from working with actors. And weirdly then got to a point, I remember when Villain was happening and people were like, oh, does it not feel weird that someone else is out making your film, like a film that you wrote? And I was kind of sat there at home thinking, I'm not stressed. I'm not like, someone else has taken on the stress. I'm not stood in a freezing cold car park for 3 weeks worrying about getting this shot, that shot. I was just kind of looking at my bank account thinking, great, I've been paid for a script. So I'm happy to kind of write as many scripts as possible. I've been able to separate the two. And like I say, the stuff like writing things like Tales from the Trap for Terry Stone is like, it's quite enjoyable sometimes, not worrying about actually having to direct it. That you can just kind of, hand it over to other people and see what they do with it.
Yeah,
and as long as you don't get too kind of caught up and get too precious, I think you've got to learn not to be precious with stuff. Yeah. So in my work with the screen film community, I've known Kate Herron for a number of years, since my first feature film, The Plague. And the last couple of years we've been working together. It's been great coming in. I've been doing more and more kind of workshops. So it's been really wonderful being able to come in and teach storytelling to start with, teaching about short filmmaking, seeing ideas come to fruition, and just being able to watch stuff and inspire younger filmmakers, because it inspires me as well. Like that's how I learn. And that's the thing for me, like with teaching, I think a great teacher is still a student. Like I'm always learning from everyone that I teach. And in some respects, students aren't just students, they themselves can teach you about their experiences and their attitudes. So it's been great. I've worked on a number of projects which have been like, there's limited time with the scale you're working on, the schedule. But I think that's fantastic because in 8 weeks you're going to go from nothing, people never met each other, meeting for the first time, and in 8 weeks' time you're going to have an edited film. So I love that idea because again it shows that whatever background, however you're coming into it, whether you've got experience or no experience, you're going to collaborate, learn, and produce a film. So I'm always excited making these films and working on these projects.
Quick fast fire questions here, just to get to know the great Greg Hall.
Let's do it.
Writing or directing?
I would say directing.
Directing, all right.
But I've grown into writing.
Yeah. You said directing, all right. Hollywood or Pinewood?
Boy, Pinewood.
Okay.
No, I'll take Hollywood money. But yeah.
No, of course. Beer or champagne?
Champagne. I'm a real snob. If you turn up to my house with Prosecco or Cava, you get booted out. It's got to be champagne. I like the finer things in life.
I think I know your answer for this one, but Nando's or pizza?
Nando's is good. I can't be a snob about Nando's, but Pizza Express and pizza.
Pizza is pretty. All right. Crisps or chocolate type of person?
I don't eat crisps.
Don't eat crisps?
I only eat chocolate. I've never eaten crisps in my entire life.
That is the correct answer, actually.
Yeah. But it's got to be good chocolate, not cheap chocolate.
Cheap chocolate,
again.
Well, like Lindor? Yeah.
Nah,
My mum's like that. Scorsese or Coppola?
Scorsese.
All
day. Yeah.
One of the best. Breaking Bad or The Wire?
I would say The Wire because I've seen more of The Wire, but I'm terrible at TV.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
So I've not seen either of the full series, but The Wire was more engaging.
All right, bit more UK stuff. Peaky Blinders or Mad Men?
Oh man, I've seen neither of these, and I always get.
You haven't seen Peaky Blinders?
I always get cussed for not seeing either of them.
Watch this.
Yeah, I think I was working on something where people were mentioning Mad Men more, so I'm going to say that. But yeah, I should watch more TV. But
yeah,
that's one of my flaws.
Yeah. Christmas or New Year's?
Christmas. I hate New Year's. I never go out for New Year's.
Never got New Year's.
And I love Christmas. It's one of my favourite days of the year.
Lastly, to cool off in this heat, would you go to a beach or a lake?
Beach.
As
long as it weren't crowded, beach.
Yeah, right,
Sand beach, not pebble beach.
Sand beach, not pebble beach, yeah, fair enough. That concludes fast fire, quick fire, thank you.
I hope they made sense. I hope you learned more about me from those answers.
Yeah.
I don't watch enough TV.
Yeah, of course. Just to say thank you for this as well, Greg. It's been really, really great to hear straight from the source. So obviously, I know in filmmaking, you have to talk to this person, talk to that person, but hearing straight from the tree of the knowledge where it sprouts from, it's been really great. Especially with how you've said, I think what I'm going to take away from this is just do it really. Don't need to wait around for yes or no's. Don't need to wait around for anything really. If you've got the idea, just shoot it. And I think another thing as well was that obviously that just gives you that undeniable proof of just your abilities and what you can do. And I think that's something that I'm gonna take away with from today, as well as obviously all the other stuff that you've mentioned.
Well, thank you. I hope it was informative. And I think, like you said, those takeaways are just go out and do it. And I think ultimately, even though I've shared my opinions, I don't think anyone should really listen to me. I think you should prove me wrong and listen to yourself. And that's not that you shouldn't take inspiration from people, that you should learn from people, but ultimately you should do your own thing and carve your own way. So while I've tried to share and inspire, which I always try to do, I would also contradict myself and say, do not listen to me, do not do what I have did or do your own thing, carve your own way, and that's the way forward.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's exciting. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
Much.